Garrett Wilson, Ohio State. Jameson Williams, Alabama Crimson Tide. Who is wide receiver one in this class? Man, asking me to pick between these two players is like asking me to pick who my favorite child is. It is so difficult. But luckily for me, we're going to let the numbers decide. We're going to compare their hands, their route running, their deep ball ability, and their yards after catch ability. We'll tally the points and see which one of these playmakers comes out on top as wide receiver one based on the numbers. We're going to use 13 different analytic metrics to do so, all numbers provided by Pro Football Focus. Let's get it going, starting with their hands, starting with Garrett Wilson, Ohio State. Garrett Wilson caught 73% of his targets last year, dropping 7.9% of them, contested catch rate of 61%, and an average of 11.2 yards of depth ran on each of his targets. Jameson Williams, Alabama, caught 67% of balls thrown his way, dropped 7.1% of them, came down with 40% of contested balls, and had an average depth of 14.5 yards on his target. Man, this is really close. Garrett Wilson, slightly higher catch percentage, also slightly higher drop percentage, better at the contested catch rate, but Jameson Williams running significantly further on each of his routes. Obviously, the further you run on a route, the higher the rate of catch difficulty on average. So for me, honestly, this is a stone cold tie on the hands. It's 1-1, but luckily we have three more skill sets to look at to go ahead and break this tie. We're going to move into route running. Before we do, if you like videos like this, go ahead and give it a thumbs up so I know to make more. And if there's other NFL prospects you'd like to see me compare, drop those names down below. Moving into route running, starting again with Garrett Wilson. We're going to specifically look at how these players fared against man coverage. Garrett Wilson was targeted on 22% of the routes that he ran against man coverage last season, and he had a Pro Football Focus grade of 80 against man coverage. Specifically, when he was pressed by an opposing corner, he had a press man coverage grade of 79, so he fared similarly. And again, when looking at man coverage and route running ability, I wanted to look at specifically how they performed running those routes in the middle of the route tree, 8 to 22 yards, the slants, the digs, the outs, the curls, the comebacks. Those to me really define good route runners, more than like a flat route or a go route where you're using maybe more of your speed. So how did they do in the middle of the field? Garrett Wilson, a grade of 81 on those routes. So really across the board, he was really consistent, hovering right around 80 against man coverage. And again, right at 81 in his intermediate routes. Let's compare that to Jameson Williams, Alabama. He was targeted on 20% of his routes that he ran against man coverage. So similar to Garrett Wilson there. And against man coverage, he had a grade of 82. When corners pressed Jameson Williams, that did drop to 71. They didn't do it a lot because that's a big risk, because if you miss him, he is gone. But we saw him struggle. That's the only knock on him really, is if you have a corner who can be physical with him. We saw it with Sauce Gardner when they played Cincinnati. That's one part of his game where you might have to improve a little bit, being a little bit stronger when you're getting pressed by a physical corner. And again, in those intermediate routes, 8 to 22 yards, he held up just fine as well. A Pro Football Focus grade of 80. So really similar all across the board. But the one big discrepancy we see is that Garrett Wilson performed significantly better against press man coverage. So this point goes to Garrett Wilson. And we now have Garrett Wilson with a 2-1 lead on Jameson Williams. We have two more skill sets to take a look at. Next, we're going to look at their deep ball ability. Starting Garrett Wilson, Ohio State. Garrett Wilson had 9 deep receptions last season, totaling 322 yards. A deep catch being a ball that travels over 20 yards in the air. Garrett Wilson averaged 7.2 yards per deep route that he ran. So for every route that he ran where he was going 20 or more yards down the field, he averaged 7.2 yards. That includes balls that he didn't even catch. So that's a pretty respectable number. And Garrett Wilson also averaged 26 yards per deep catch, which seems staggering, but oh my goodness, wait until you hear what Jameson Williams did in this category. Jameson Williams had 13 deep catches last season, totaling 671 yards, 11.6 yards per deep route run, and I triple checked it. Go ahead and quadruple check it for me. 51 yards per deep catch. Unbelievable. Obviously, that led the nation. I thought Garrett Wilson's was impressive. It's almost double. This one is not really close to me. It's no shade against Garrett Wilson. He's a good deep threat, but Jameson Williams is just built different in this area. Definitely the best deep threat in this class. He takes this point easily, and we have one more metric to go. We now have a stone cold tie. The tiebreaker is going to be the yards after catch ability. We have 3 different metrics to look at here, starting Garrett Wilson, Ohio State. Wilson averaged 6.0 yards after catch per reception last season. He also broke 19 tackles, and he gained an average of 10.6 yards per screen pass, because that is a really good metric of how well you're doing yards after catch when you catch a ball at the line of scrimmage. It's a really good barometer of your playmaking ability, and on average, to be getting a first down every screen pass you catch is just ridiculous. Great playmaking skills from Garrett Wilson. Let's compare that to Jameson Williams, Alabama. An average of 9.3 yards after catch per reception, broke 12 tackles last year, and had a respectable 7.1 yards per screen pass. So although Garrett Wilson broke more tackles and did better on screens, I mean, those numbers are just window dressing to me, because really when we're talking about yards after catch, and if Jameson Williams is having an average of 50% more production after catch, 9.3 compared to 6.0, it's not really close here. Jameson Williams gets the point, 4 yards after catch, and he wins it by the numbers, very close against Garrett Wilson. If you think there are some data that are missing here that would help add to the conversation, please drop that below. And if you can find a number where they measure the average yards of separation on routes run, I have the paid membership to Pro Football Focus, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So if you could find that, that'd be really helpful for the route running and separation category. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe if you want to win an official New York Jets draft cap on game night. But either way, let's go Jets.